All right, welcome everybody to this episode of the Steel Toe University podcast. With me today is Greg Weitz. He's with Global Syn Turf and American Syn Turf. And Greg is a manufacturer in the artificial turf industry. And I'm really excited to have him on because I've had the pleasure of knowing him personally for, I would say, at least the last 4 years or so.
At least,
and,
yep.
We've worked on quite a few projects together and worked through quite a few headaches together. So with that, Greg, tell us just a little bit about yourself and give us an understanding of how you came to land in the artificial turf industry.
Sure will. Thanks for having me, Phil. I appreciate it. It's a great platform you have, and I'm excited to get introduced to it. I have been in this industry now since the late 1990s. I worked for a company that was the golf and landscape division of Field Turf back in 1998 and 99, where, of course, the vast majority of all artificial turf that was going down was for athletic fields. At the time, I was a high school history teacher and coach, so I had my summers off. Well, my father-in-law purchased one of the first residential territories from Field Turf, that being Pennsylvania and Ohio. So I cut my teeth in the industry by installing. I spent those 2 summers putting a few projects in the ground, just enough to understand what we were doing. And then I got out of the teaching profession in the spring of 2000 and started full-time installing with my own crew. And I probably did 300 to 400 projects in the next 5 years. As a crew leader, just driving up and down the East Coast, truck and trailer, putting projects in the ground. I mean, probably in that amount of time, I lived in the Pittsburgh area, and we probably did 3 projects that were quote unquote local in 4 or 5 years. That tells you how much more popular turf has gotten since then. You would never put those miles in today. There's obviously business going in every major market in the whole eastern seaboard, as well as in the Midwest, the Southeast, and all the way over to California, where it's the hottest area for turf. So from there I got on with a company that worked with Home Depot. I had that account for about 5 years. That was interesting. Working with a serious big box on a national program with we had a turf program for every sales platform and every sales channel that Home Depot had. And that was a really, really good experience for me to see how we can really scale the turf business with a retail partner that has over 2,500 stores across the country. So that was a great experience for me. And then from there, I cut on with Global Syn Turf in October of 15. And right now I'm really concentrated on distribution and, really trying to get our turf produced to a high quality, keeping up with the latest trends in turf production, and then getting it through to our distribution partners. And of course, with AST, now it's been going on 3 years. We are manufacturing here in the States, in Dalton, Georgia. So I'm kind of heading up that effort to produce that product line and get it into our sales channels as well.
Great. Well, thank you for the background and all the history behind that. It's amazing how you mentioned going and doing all this drive time because turf jobs just weren't that normal.
Nope.
I know in the last decade, it's probably been 10 years since we installed our first turf job. And that was one that year, just one off. And the next year may have been 3.
Yeah.
Man, it's growing like crazy. It's everywhere you turn, every vendor, supplier, manufacturer. How did the mentality, at least out here on the East Coast, how did we begin to adopt that turf was a go-to solution?
Sure. So great question. We're at the tip of the iceberg in this industry still. I mean, at most, the golf and landscape category is 20 years old at most. And from a mainstream standpoint, like you're speaking to, Phil, maybe 10 years old. And I think a lot of that has to do with a couple of factors. First and foremost is the product itself, right? I mean, when I started installing in the late 1990s, early 2000s, we had a 2.5-inch slit film, a 2-inch slit film, and one putting green turf. That's it. One color, two heights, 2-ounce weights, and a putting green. That's all we had to go to bat with. And you know, looking at a sample, I mean, you couldn't just send a sample. Like today, I can send this sample to somebody and they put that in their hands and they put their hands through it and they love it. It's a great looking sample. You couldn't do that with a 2.5-inch slit film product 20 years ago, not without sending it full of sand and rubber to make it look like it's going to look in its finished state. So that's one of the major. Now we've got different shapes of turf blades, different colors. We have thatch. I mean, the products have done the manufacturers have done a great job in providing the market with great products, quality products. They perform, they look great, they feel great. So to me, that's first and foremost. Secondly, the acceptance of artificial grass, where there's been water restrictions, right? Of course, this whole thing started from a mainstream standpoint in the Southwest, whether it be Phoenix area, Vegas area, Southern California. That whole area started a major trend with artificial turf whenever there was a drought situation. And green, you know, was a real option versus a stone front yard or something else. So the whole initiative of saving water, now we're saving maintenance. So that entire process has really helped get us where we are today. And don't forget, you turn the television on any Saturday or Sunday in the fall, and you're going to see an artificial turf football field, right? These kids play every day on artificial turf soccer fields, baseball fields. So there's an acclimation to it. They play on it, they practice on it. Wow, I can have this in my backyard. And then you see a really cool product that looks a lot better than maybe a field product does. And so it's just the maturation of the whole industry over the last 8 to 10 to 15 years, where it's becoming normal to see it and play on it. And it's becoming, and of course, like I said, the development of the products has a lot to do with that as well.
Yeah, I can, thank you for that. I can see that, and I see it here locally, just in all of our county fields. I mean, yep. Middle school fields, it started at the high school level, got down to the middle school level. Now it's county-wide, where parks have been, and most game fields have been transformed into artificial turf. You're right.
Yeah, and a lot of that, Phil, turns into land use, right? Yeah. I mean, no longer can you have the game field untouched, except for Friday nights. The schools are expanding. A lot of these more densely populated areas, schools are taking up that space. You can't have a practice field for football and a practice field for the band and a practice field for all the other sports and have a game field that goes untouched. There's just not enough land for that in a lot of these neighborhood schools that we're building. So you create an artificial turf field for the games and maybe one for practice. And not only can the schools use that, but the entire community can use that as well. And you're not chewing up fields and chewing up maintenance all the time.
So where do you think in now and say in the next few years, where do you think the best opportunities are for folks that are in a similar business? Maybe they're in landscaping or grading or outdoor construction, they're doing hardscapes. How can they segue, or should they consider artificial turf as a viable business model?
Great question. And it's yes, yes, and yes. I mean, anybody that is in a customer's backyard, whether they're fixing sprinklers or putting in lights or doing hardscapes or landscape, if you're working in somebody's backyard, you need to have some samples of turf with you, especially if you're a hardscape contractor. No two products complement each other better than hardscapes and artificial turf. And I'm talking about whether it's pavers, whether it's flagstone, whether it's travertine tile, whatever it is, it looks awesome next to artificial turf. So those two things should be married. And what I love about that is the hardscape contractor, to get into this business, the guy already knows how to rip out a lawn, right? He already knows how to fix irrigation heads. He already knows how to install and grade and compact a crushed stone base. right? And he has the manpower, trucks, trailers, and equipment for all that. Well, guess what? That's about 65 to 70% of the turf install, right? So instead of just putting pavers down, you got to learn how to install the artificial turf. But what we see is the hard part, which is the tear out and the stone work and the base work. The hardscape contractors, the landscape contractors, they can already do that. So to get them into the turf game, number one, they've got, it's not that expensive because they've got all the heavy equipment that's necessary, whether it's a plate compactor or a couple of sod cutters, trucks and trailers. You know, what do you need? You need a couple power brooms, you need a couple drop spreaders, and all the hand tools you probably already have. And then you need some cutting tools, right? And you can get all of those in the carpet section of pretty much of your local Home Depot, Lowe's, or Ace. So if you put together a power broom, like a still, I like the still yard bosses with the handlebars and the two wheels. If you put that together with a couple drop spreaders and some knives, you probably won't reach $1,000 startup fee. Well, to get into a $1 billion category, which is an approximation for the non-field business, to get into a $1 billion backyard category for less than $1,000 equipment investment, that's a pretty good deal, right? So anybody that's in the backyard, and of course we can go into the whole COVID situation, right? People are spending more time at home, whether they want to or not. People are entertaining at home. There's never been a time where people spent more time or money in their backyard than right now. So instead of limiting yourself to the pavers or the patio or the fire pit or the pergola, right? Because that means your opportunity for that guy's backyard is 20, 30, 40% of the backyard. Add artificial turf to your product line, and then the entire backyard is now up for a revenue discussion, right? Because the activities that you used to do in your backyard, when you add a hardscape feature to it, you're going to do those same activities, but you're doing it in less grass space, which puts a lot of pressure on that natural grass to stay alive. So it's a perfect segue into saying, hey, while we're here, let's take a look at artificial turf, and let's make your backyard virtually a maintenance-free environment. And I say virtually because it's not 100% maintenance-free. There is much, much less maintenance, but you're talking about removing debris with either a plastic leaf rake or a leaf blower. So it's very minimal, it's less intrusive without the maintenance, and it's just there for the enjoyment that much more. So I would say to anybody that's working in anybody's backyard, you should have some artificial turf in your arsenal. It's just another arrow in the quiver for you to be that all-in-one backyard makeover contractor.
Yeah, it's a huge opportunity. I've seen us flip completely from hardscapes. This will be the first year artificial turf is our number one item that we're selling. I didn't plan it that way, although now I'm going to get a lot more strategic about planning it that way, because we're scratching the surface now into putting greens, and we're actually a little further along in that. And those are fun. I mean, these opportunities, these are fun projects. They're relatively easy to install. There's a few tips and tricks and things to know, but let's talk about a few of those, because
Sure.
Common questions are, how do you address pets and pet waste and odors? And that's a leading question because we do a lot of kennel work as well. What's the official answer on that?
So the great question. One of the leading sectors of our industry is obviously the pet turf. Everybody has a pet turf. Well, what does that mean to have a pet turf versus your other landscape products? Let's talk about that first. So if a manufacturer has a pet grass or a grass that is specific to pets, there's usually two things about it that make it different than your landscape products. Number one, it's usually a shorter pile product, okay? I've got a picture of a short product here, or a sample of a short product here. This is an inch and a quarter, or actually it's an inch and an eighth tall at 55 ounces, okay? So it's shorter than an inch and 3/4 or a 2-inch landscape product, And that makes it easier to clean and scrub and keep sanitary for the pets, okay? The second differentiator between a pet turf and a landscape grass is the backing. Drainage is everything, not only to let the urine go through the turf, but the increased rinsing and cleaning that homeowner or facility manager has to do to keep the turf sanitary for the pets, okay? So let's go one step below the artificial turf itself. When you're doing a pet facility, you have to take your base material into consideration. If you just put a crush and run underneath your pet turf and you lock it up, that's going to absorb some of that urine, and it's going to create a slow draining subbase, which will smell very badly in a relatively short amount of time. So when you have a grass or a turf that drains fast, it doesn't do you any good to put that on top of a crushed rock base that is 95% compacted, that gives you no horizontal drainage, right? Or I'm sorry, vertical drainage. So you want to build a base that will take on the water and the urine and the waste that the grass will let through it. So what does that mean? That means you've got to build a base that is stable enough to handle the turf installation and stable enough to handle the activity that the dogs and the people will put on it when it's done, but still allow water and urine to go through the base. So you're talking about a bottom layer of drain rock, maybe a 57 clean stone, and a top layer of maybe 3/8 chips that you can put on top of the drain rock that will compact but still allow good drainage. And one thing that is always very difficult to talk about is exactly what stone should your base be made out of. Well, as you know, that's different for you in the Atlanta region as it is for me in the Jacksonville, Florida region. And it's very different for somebody in New York, Connecticut, Oregon, California, or Arizona. Everybody has different soils. Everybody has different aggregates that are available to them. So you just have to know what is available to you, what you're trying to achieve, and then talk to the guys at the quarry or the supply center and tell them what you're doing. Tell them that you're trying to find something that will be stable underfoot but still allow drainage. And you can come up with a combination that will work for that pet application. So before you even talk about what to do to clean the turf, you've got to build that lawn correctly so that it is you can keep it as clean as possible. Because one of the major selling features of artificial turf for pets is that you can clean it. You can disinfect your pet lawn. You can't disinfect natural grass and soil, right? So you really sell that point that you can clean and disinfect the grass, and that's extremely important when you're talking about a high-end pet facility that's charging $40, $50, $60 a day to watch your dog, or $80 to $100 a night while you're gone. You've got to keep the environment safe for the pets. So that brings us to, okay, let's assume all that's done right and the installer leaves and you've got to create a little bit of a maintenance manual for the facility. You've got to be talking about cleaning and rinsing and scrubbing and disinfecting, right? So yes, there are infills that can help with this, but there is no substitute for working the turf. You've got to clean it. You've got to rinse it. You can use mild cleansers like Simple Green. Right? You can put the Simple Green container on the end of your garden hose, spray the whole thing down, agitate it with a stiff bristled broom and rinse all that through. And you've cleaned the area pretty well. People will leave their irrigation in the ground. Great idea. Overnight, the last thing your staff does is you do a strong walk through the pet area, picking up all the solids that you can. Maybe if there's an area that had some soft solids with some residue, you can have a spray bottle with a cleanser and wipe that up as best you can. And then at night, they're spraying, they're running that irrigation at night to rinse the system through. And that's what you have to do repeatedly to keep it smelling normal and as clean as possible for the dogs.
Great explanation for that, because that question comes up a lot. And then when it translates over to the residential market that say not a pet cleaning facility. So typically, what would you say about building a base or how to, in a backyard where they've got two Shih Tzus and then a family of kids. You know,
Yeah.
do we go to that extra effort or not to prep a permeable type base?
Well, I would say yes. I mean, you should for sure. But the one thing that I have asked customers to do and that we recommend that they do is if you've got, let's say you have a 2,500 square foot backyard and yeah, you've got a dog or two, you're not going to scrub that whole thing down once a week for a dog or two. You're just not. So
Right.
is it possible to fence off with a temporary fence a portion of that lawn, and that's where you let your dogs go? If you're not taking them out on a walk around the block and he's just got to go real quick, can you get him to go in one corner of the lawn? That way you can clean and scrub 200 or 300 square feet every week and it's no problem, right? So can you do that? Can you get a temporary fence and just put that up so that you do that last squirt at night before you go to bed? Can they just do that? And then, yeah, once a week you can clean that corner. The other thing to do, and that depends on the dog and the owner, is when you go from natural grass to artificial turf, there may be a little bit of a break-in period for the dog to get used to that surface. Is there any way you can train your dog to kind of go to the bathroom in the same spot all the time? That would be great. That's wishful thinking for me, but it's easier said than done as the dog owner. But those are two things that we recommend in that scenario. Because, and then of course, you don't have to use a pet turf for a residential backyard that has one or two dogs, right? You can use a regular 60 ounce 1.75" product, 80 ounce 2-inch product, whatever it is you like, because they're all going to withstand the traffic of the dog, and they all have the ability to drain, and you can clean them properly to keep it safe for everybody.
Okay, great. Thank you for that, because that gets asked quite often. So when we look at, would you say, as a standard rule of thumb, you would prefer a open draining base or that crushed stone base that is 95% compacted so water can shed, like which we do a lot under putting greens?
Yeah, from an installation standpoint, it's always easier to just go with something you can lock up and compact in it, and you know it's easy to work with, right? It's easier to grade out, it's easy to compact, and it's very durable to stand up to heavy traffic during the installation and for years to come. So the other part of it is what does your property require, right? Some people in a subdivision, maybe they don't want 2,000 square feet of water shedding off of your lawn into the common area or into your neighbor's yard. You really have to know the drainage requirements for every property and every division and every HOA that you go into. So that's going to determine what type of base you build as well. What are the drainage requirements for the job site you have? Because listen, I live close to the beach. You've got to take that into consideration if you're a few blocks from the beach, right? If you're on the beach and you're a few blocks from the ocean, you're doing something very different than you might be 10 or 15 miles inland. So all of those things are in play when you're talking about what kind of base you build.
So what do you think some of the opportunities are for somebody new? How can new, maybe being in business and doing hardscapes, what's a good way to get started, to try to land your first client and try to put yourself out there and market your business? What are some ideas you might give them in terms of marketing?
So from marketing standpoint, you've got to get a job on the ground, right? You either have to get a job on the ground or know someone that has one in the ground so that you can at least get on it, get your photos, get them uploaded into social media or on your website. But first and foremost, you've got to go look at where you're going to find your supplier, right? Who's going to supply you with the turf? Who's going to supply you with the accessories needed that you may not be able to find in every market? And then getting samples, and you really just have to be comfortable enough with the product and the process to show some samples to a homeowner where maybe you're putting in a hardscape feature. You've got to cut your teeth somewhere. Unless you're lucky enough to do it on your own backyard first, there's nothing wrong with that too. That's a great way to get it done. A friend, a neighbor, a family member, cut your teeth on a friendly job site, and you can take your time. You can take pictures of every step of the way, and you can really hone in on your skills before you go out to the general public.
Yeah, that's key. We started off by accident just getting getting that one job. And I'll tell you, this is a really interesting time right now in early or late 2020, because there aren't that many players. This isn't like hardscape, and there's a lot. There's certainly were more than there were 3 years ago, but wait 3 more years. From a positioning online standpoint, getting ranking and Google positioning, if you think you want to get into the turf business, start that process on your website already. Start keywording your website, put up an artificial turf page, even if it's generic, and start putting something like Greg said, if you have a chance to just work on someone's job and they agree to let you take pictures of them, I would do that. One thing that I learned early on, and I copied what worked in hardscapes when I went to artificial turf. When I was in hardscapes, I went immediately and found the manufacturer. I worked very closely with Belgard for many years. As soon as I got the right manufacturer that I was comfortable with, that had the right representation, and I knew that they would provide training and education and information and samples and support, I stuck with them. Same thing's true in turf. In fact, probably even more so in turf, because it seems like everybody and their brother has a turf line, and a lot of them aren't their lines. They're still made by the same core fundamental companies but they rebrand and they can private label turf. But the reason I like buying through the same supplier is because if something goes wrong, if you have questions, you have a direct line to get them answered. You get that ongoing education. Like you and I, Greg, it's fantastic because I can text you pictures of what's going on. You can give me feedback on jobs. You're never at a loss trying to get somebody on the phone and explain who you are and where your job is and what the problem is, because you have questions. So as a manufacturer, what makes your products special, like from the backing to the offerings? I already know, like, I have an answer to that, but I'll let you say it in your words.
So from our perspective, we have 2 lines: the Global Syn Turf line, the American Syn Turf line. The Global Syn Turf line, we've got over 35 SKUs, pet products, putting greens, activity fields, and of course a host of landscape products, all colors, all heights, all weights. What makes us an interesting partner, not only do we have all of those different turf products, but we have 10 different distribution warehouses across the country. 10. So we can get turf pretty much anywhere to anyone inside of 3 days. We have a standing inventory of between 10 and 12 million square feet of finished product. Not an issue. So availability is your number one ability, right? The turf's available. You've probably seen in some other scenarios right now, lumber's not available in a lot of territories, a lot of markets in this country right now. It's not available. So different market scenarios create different challenges. We always try to have a glut of inventory. We do have large customers that will buy by the truckload. We do have customers that just buy the job. So we want to have the ability to deliver our customers product. We try to turn that PO over same day and ship it out within 24 hours. So you're literally getting turf within a day or 2, maybe 3 of the time you ordered it in most markets. So the turf is part of it, right? But the infrastructure, the customer service you get, and the distribution lines that your manufacturer has are of utmost importance. Contractors are not thinking today on Thursday what they need next Wednesday, next Thursday, next Friday. It's Thursday. I better start thinking about materials that I need for Friday and Saturday. So being able to have access to the material, have direct access to get your orders in on time and have them processed in a timely manner, all of that is just as important as the turf itself, of course. On the AST side, we have a much more limited SKU offering of 8 products. We've got some products that are very unique to the landscape world, in my opinion, like the Superscape and the Epic family. They've got 4 different face blade colors in 2 different shapes. From a manufacturing standpoint, the more variables that you can put into a single product, the less uniform it looks, which gives it a better look and more realistic look and feel to the end result. So the Epic and the Superscape products, there's actually 3 different fiber types, 6 different colors in that profile. So you've seen it installed, Phil. You know what it looks like to work with it, and you know what it looks like to have it installed. It's a quality product with an unbelievable, unique look. And I think if you sell it that way, your customers will understand those differences, and then that creates value because our products are extremely competitively priced. They're manufactured here in the U.S. and we have good supply also. So we have some very unique products to the space. We have a pet turf product. We have a really nice putting green product that will accept shots from 50 yards, 100 yards out and still roll at 11, 12, 13 on the stip meter. So having the ability to do both with the same product is very important. But like I said, again, the turf, there are a lot of guys a lot of manufacturers that produce quality products. Are they accessible to you? Do they help you out with questions? If you FaceTime them from a project, will they answer and help you, right? Do they stand behind their warranty? I mean, and I'm not saying that some do and some don't. You just have to understand all of these different facets of the business and make sure that you're comfortable with that company's infrastructure, their warranty, and of course, the end result product and price.
Yeah, those are, you've mentioned, you hit on a couple terms I'll clarify for maybe some of you that are listening. When he's talking about stemp meter and roll, when he's talking about putting greens, I learned this. I mean, I learned this just in doing it because I had a golfer, a client of mine that was an avid golfer, bring a stemp meter out to the job to measure the speed. And I'm thinking in my head, like, what the hell is this tool?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, this measures the speed. So I was actually taught what it is on one of my first putting greens by a client, which you hope that's not the case, but I was also humble enough to say, okay, I don't know this, educate me. And I learned all about the roll and the speed. It measures the speed of the green, and there's ways to increase the speed of your green by adding infill sand and things like that. I will say, to put it all in a box, yeah, installing turf is really easy, especially if you've done hardscapes. But there's probably 100 tips and tricks and nuances that you pick up along the way. What do you think is the best way for somebody new to get educated on how to install turf?
Yeah, and that's a loaded question. Pre-COVID, right? You set up a training, you get a job, you set up, you hopefully somebody can help you out, and you're there doing hands-on training with maybe a manufacturer's rep or somebody that they work closely with to do training. Today is a little more challenging to do that. Some people don't want to be visited. Some manufacturers aren't letting their staff go out on the road. So we have to do things virtually. If you go to YouTube, you're going to find 1 million videos on how to install grass. That doesn't mean all 1 million videos are correct. If you look at 20 different videos, you'll probably see that 80% of it is the same. And then 20% of it is different. And that's the nuances that you were talking about. Just like any craft, anything that you're doing, you're going to figure things out for yourself. You're going to come up with tricks and better ways once you get your hands in the turf and once you figure out kind of how you want to do things. But the basics, you really ought to be able to understand how to lay the turf out. Everything's, for the most part, is 15 foot wide. You got to understand that this turf has a pile direction. That all has to be facing the same direction when you install a job and lay out those panels. And of course, edge detail and seaming. We could go on for 2 more hours about each one of those topics if we wanted to. But again, it goes back to your manufacturer. So what tools and resources do they provide for you to understand how to do some of these things? A lot of the people in manufacturing have been in the installation world, so they know, and they'll help you. Of course, they want you to be able to install their product and do a quality install because that's going to directly impact the end result. So you really, it's installing turf is the combination of pavers and carpet, right? You wish you could get You wish every turf crew could have a carpet guy on it, but those guys sometimes don't like to work outside on stone or in the mud. You don't want to do that, right? Those guys install carpet. A lot of times it's in a temperature controlled environment on a clean cement floor. That's not installing turf. That's not how it goes. But you wish you had their carpet skills on your job site. So that's kind of the combination that you're looking for. But if you can build a solid base that does what you want it to do with the water, if you can lay out the job properly, seam it in, do a right edge detail, and get your infill and brushing right, you're golden. That's like 6 steps, right? For any hardscape or landscape customer out there that's done a water feature, that's way more complicated a lot of times than turf is. So it's not that it's complicated at all, like you've said. You just got to do a couple of jobs, try to start out easy, understand that if your first job is a putting green that has high expectations from that customer, and you've got a first cut of fringe and a second cut of rough, that's not the best scenario for your first job to be. You'll probably price it wrong. You'll probably find throughout it that there are 10 things are going to happen that you didn't count on. And it's hard to make a good install in that scenario, right? So you really want to try to start out slow, start out with some areas that are open landscaping, that are, there on your hardscape job.
Yeah, that's great. That's great wisdom. If you can, in most of the people that we see, that we talk to, that are getting involved with it, are being asked for it by a customer, and they are, generally speaking, small areas. But once you, and internet and social media presence, and establishing yourself as an expert in your area and the area that you serve is huge. It will grow. And again, right now is just a really interesting time because there's a lot of room online for people to step up. But I would encourage everybody, do videos. I mean, look, I know it sounds cheesy, do TikTok videos, do YouTube videos, post Facebook videos. And I keep saying video over written word. I mean, the written word is great for algorithms on Google to get your site to rank, but video is what people are watching now. That's how people are taking in information. No one's reading articles anymore. They're watching video. So you can take one small detail of a turf project and turn it into a 10 or 15 minute video explaining that detail, and position yourself as an expert. Don't oversell and overpromise. Don't take on a huge job that could get you into trouble, but ramp up and plan now if that's something that you want to get into, which I would strongly recommend everybody who is in hardscapes or is in outdoor construction, is working in the backyard, get into artificial turf, because it's coming, and it's just opportunity that is huge. Well,
and there's a mushroom effect that happens too with an installer or a hardscaper that does one or two. It's funny because I've seen this 100 times over the years. You get your guy and he passes up turf. We don't do turf. Someone asks, we just don't do it. And then they're tired of doing that. So then they find someone in their market that does it, and they sub them out, right? And they make a buck on top, and then they're happy with that. But then after a while, they say, man, a lot of people are asking for turf, and I'm giving all this business away. I need to learn how to do it myself. So a lot of that is happening from the consumer asking for it. Well, like I told you before, Phil, what if every time you went to someone's backyard to look at a paver job, what if you set this up next to that paver? Just carry one piece. It doesn't matter what the turf is. As long as it's a nice product and you set it up next to that paver, guess what's going to get all that attention from Mrs. Smith? The piece of turf is. Because what's the paver, right? Shape, pattern, beige or gray, right? For the most part, that's going to drive 80% of your conversation. Then they say, wow, look at that turf. It sure is soft. Is it safe for kids and pets? Well, of course it is. It's safe for kids. It's safe for pets. The NFL plays on it. The NCAA play on it. A lot of your high-end pet facilities have this there. You can have this in your backyard. And then she's touching and feeling and looking out in their back. And maybe there's a couple spots where there's too much water, not enough sun, too much shade, have a hard time growing grass, and it's always an eyesore, right? Maybe there's a couple of, there's areas that track all the time and the grass can't stay alive and it's a mud area, muddy area, and you're tracking that in the house. All of these things are problems that turf can solve, right? So bring a 1x1 of turf on every appointment that you are looking to do a feature in somebody's backyard, and it will sell itself. Because unfortunately, we're tip of the iceberg with this category. And if you say artificial turf to somebody, there's a chance that they're still thinking AstroTurf from the 70s,
Yep.
right? So if you show somebody, this is a 90 ounce inch and 5/8 product. If you show somebody this and they're touching it and feeling it, and holy cow, you can shape this around boulders and rocks and tree rings, the sky's the limit. And so is your opportunity to make that much more money in the same backyard that you were going to be in anyways.
Well put. Yeah, you're right. And that's a very common scenario too, is shady backyards. They've tried to grow grass, doesn't work, poor drainage. And of course, if you're a contractor, you're correcting the drainage anyway. So while you're out there correcting the drainage, you can make the recommendation to do it. And a lot of times those are perfect applications. They fall into that anywhere from 700 to 2,000 square foot jobs. These are like in and out, easy to do jobs.
Yep.
And they're money makers. You don't worry, you'll get to the 5,000 and 6,000 square foot jobs. But I'll tell you, the jobs under 3,000 square feet are money.
Yeah.
There's great profit in it.
Yeah.
And so that leaves me with this. If you're a new installer, or if you're thinking about it and you've got that job, or if you're listening to this and you think, I really want to learn more, how can people get a hold of you? So you can contact me through either of our websites, whether it's globalsynturf.com or americansynturf.com. You're free to email me at Greg_Weitz, WEITZ at globalsynturf.com. Of course, you can call me at 510-305-9450. And like Phil, the greatest ability of any manufacturer or sales rep, which I'm kind of both, is availability. My family and wife will attest that there are no working hours. If you're going to shut your phone off at 5 o'clock, you're going to alienate half of your customer base. So you can't do that. You've got to be available. These guys have on the spot questions. I get FaceTime calls every day from contractors that are saying, hey, take a look at this seam. What's it doing? What do I got to do differently? Take a look at this edge detail. How do I handle this? You've got to be available for that stuff. And we are, as a team, the global team is certainly there for all of that. And, anything you need from us, we have written resources. We've got online resources. We've got video resources, samples. We have sample departments in probably 4 or 5 of our 10 warehouses. We send out samples every single day. We have sample departments. It's all free to the customer, free to the installer. We can do all of that and handle your sample needs just as easy as we handle an order for you. Great. Yeah, I know that to be true. I carry my box of samples with me in fact, I request samples at least every 3 weeks or so. It's ship me a new box of samples. Yeah. I leave them with the clients. You want to leave them, I don't want to overwhelm them, but you want to leave them with 2 or 3 just to get an idea of how it feels and which one they prefer in their yard.
And that's a good point real quick, Phil, is not overwhelming yourself or your customer with 8 to 10 to 15 samples, right? Yeah. I mean, you can't do that. Yeah, we have 35 SKUs, but we're selling to thousands of customers in every state in the country. So in your area, in your neck of the woods, in your market, you should have a putting green or 2, a pet turf, and like a good, better, best landscape product. It's 4 or 5 products tops. Because right away, if it's just a landscape project, you can take the pet turf and maybe the putting green off the table, and then you're staring at 3 products. What do you like? What do you like look and feel? What's the difference in price? It gets manageable. You can't send somebody 18 to 20 samples and expect them to make anything out of it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Give them 2 or 3 choices of and you're going to figure out what your most popular, best-selling lines are, and they're your go-to. And the nice thing about that is sometimes you'll end up with some fairly decent sized scrap sections. So if you're selling the same product, you may only need a little bit. And so if you can run
No
to
doubt
your
about it.
shop, yeah,
And you can use leftovers from a landscape job to go around the putting green all day long. And the other thing we really didn't talk about too much, Phil, was finding a manufacturer that can help you with accessories. I mean, we carry 4 or 5 different types of infill. We carry seam tape, we carry glue, we carry bender boards, we carry padding for underneath turf for playgrounds. Everything that you need besides the stone base, we carry that as well. So it's important to be able to find those specialty goods along with your turf so that that entire job can be ordered at the same time from the same people, shipped on the same carrier with the same delivery date. Because God knows you're running around enough as a contractor, as an installer. You're running around enough looking for things. It's nice to have a one-stop shop for all your turf and accessory needs. And that's what GST and AST provides to our customers.
Wow, great. Thank you for adding that in, because I want everybody to know that, because that's not easy. It is a pain in the butt to go around and source all of those things, especially when it comes to infill. I mean, unless you're in the turf business, a lot of suppliers, Home Depot doesn't know that they sell infill, what silica sand. As an installer, you learn that what type of silica sand you need, but then you're running around and calling Home Depots because they have 10 bags here and 15 bags there. It's a pain.
It's a mess.
You're much better off with the one-stop shop.
Yep.
Well, thank you for this, Greg. I mean, as always, you provide a ton of information. I would encourage anybody listening or watching that has an interest in this, give Greg a shout, give him a call. He's a wealth of information. I've worked with a number of different suppliers, and I will say I have settled on Greg as the absolute best. I just like I did with Belgard and Pavers. I believe in loyalty and also having that support. And when Greg's not kidding, when you need to FaceTime him and get him on the phone, he's right there. So look to Global Syn Turf, American Syn Turf too, if you're looking to get into this business, and it is huge. The time is now. So, and the opportunity is never, ever, with COVID, even added to the opportunity. I would say the opportunity was huge going into COVID. With COVID, it's now insane. And so this is about to go nuts, and you can be at the beginning of it, or right in the middle. So with that, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, you bet. We'll definitely have you on again, and I really appreciate it, Greg.
That sounds great. Thanks, Phil.